I'm a tax compliance officer with the Ministry of Finance. This is a new program. It's called Tax Information and Compliance. And what we do in our area here is we basically educate businesses on their provincial sales tax requirements. So we contact new businesses by telephone. We actually come out and visit businesses who would like more information about PST. And we do PST presentations whenever we're asked also. So it's basically an education role. I'm just going to talk a little bit about our whole division's vision. We want to be recognized and respected for fairness, effectiveness, and integrity in administering the Saskatchewan tax programs. Our goals are to promote compliance with the Saskatchewan tax programs through quality service, taxpayer education, and enforcement. We want to ensure that businesses and taxpayers are treated fairly and consistently. We also want to ensure that our programs are administered efficiently with minimal administrative efforts for businesses. We want to ensure that our employees are skilled, knowledgeable, and versatile, and that there's open communication. So this is just a chart of the provincial sales tax revenue over the past 15 years. The provincial sales tax revenue is used to fund highways, education, all types of programs, and that's what the revenue is used for. So just to start with the provincial sales tax, so it's 5%. The PST is 5%. That's what the tax rate is, same as the GST. It's levied on pretty much all goods and only some services. Retail purchases in the province and on imported goods. So when you go and buy a good, you're going to pay 5% PST. When you buy something out of province, you're also required to pay the 5% PST. And I'll go into that a little bit more in a bit. When we register businesses, we register businesses two different ways. We give some businesses a vendor license and some businesses a registered consumer permit number. And the difference is the vendor's license, that PST number starts with a 0, a 1, or a 2, and it's generally given to businesses who collect PST. And so we got a few examples of there: a clothing store, a lawyer, because that's a taxable service when you have some legal services, and a restaurant. We register restaurants, although they don't collect PST, we register them so they can purchase their non-returnable packaging materials exempt of the PST. We register businesses as a consumer, and those are generally going to be people who don't charge you tax when you go and acquire their services. So that could be your plumbing contractor, your roofer, your doctor, your beauty salon. None of those places charge you PST when you go and get those services. But we still do register that business, and we'll go into why we do that. So when you're a business, you're required to pay PST on anything you use in your business. So whether it's a new good you bought, or whether it's a used business asset that you bought, a business is required to pay PST on basically everything they use in their business. Supplies for that hair salon, tools, consumables, things you take out of your own resale inventory. You're required to pay PST on your advertising and your promotional items, so your business cards, your sales brochures, your things you give away as a promotion, you're required to pay PST on that. And you're also required to pay PST on any taxable services that you acquire. If you're not charged PST on a new or a used business asset or taxable service, you are required to self-assess and remit the tax. So that's why every business gets registered, whether you collect tax or you don't. We register all businesses, and one of the reasons is so you can report the PST that you owe on something that you didn't pay the tax on, something you bought out of province, something you bought from a used good from somebody, you need to make sure that you're paying the PST on those things. When we say you pay the tax, we say you owe the tax on the total laid down cost. So I'd like to use an example of if you bought a computer in Alberta or in the United States. You look on the invoice, was there 5% PST charged on there? If there wasn't any PST, then you're required to pay us the PST on the laid down cost. What did it cost you to get that good from the United States into Canada? So that includes if there was a freight charge that you had to pay, if there was customs or duties, or if there was in the exchange. So if it's US funds, you need to convert it into Canadian funds, and then you pay us the PST on basically the total laid down cost. On your PST return form, there's a line that's called net tax on consumption, and that's where you report the 5% tax that you would owe on that purchase that you didn't pay PST on. Generally, if you buy in Saskatchewan, you're going to pay the PST to the suppliers. But if that supplier didn't charge you the PST, it's still up to you as the consumer to report the PST on that good. Some of the services that are taxable, I mentioned that most goods are taxable. Most goods are taxable, except there's a few exemptions with goods. We don't tax food in Saskatchewan. We don't tax prescription drugs. We don't tax reading materials. But all other goods are pretty much taxable. In terms of services, though, most services are not subject to tax, with the exception of these ones. We tax an accounting or a bookkeeping service. We tax architectural and engineering services. If you're getting your building cleaned, we tax commercial building cleaning services, but we don't tax residential cleaning. So your house cleaning isn't taxable, but your building cleaning is. Most computer services are taxable, legal services, and veterinarian services. We have an information bulletin that lists all the taxable and the non-taxable services, which is PST 46. So we talked a little bit about why we register businesses as a vendor. They're the ones that sell or rent taxable goods or services. They're the clothing store, they're the lawyer, they're the computer guy. The vendors collect PST, and vendors are allowed to buy their goods for resale tax-free. And you do that by quoting your PST number to your suppliers. We also allow a vendor to purchase their non-returnable packaging materials tax-free. So if you're a restaurant, that would be your pizza box or your takeout bag or your styrofoam container. All those are exempt to a restaurant. If you're a grocery store or a clothing store, that means that your bags, your tags, anything that's sold with your product and not returned back to you is exempt to a vendor. So those are some exemptions that we give to businesses. When you invoice and you're a vendor, you need to collect tax on the selling price, not on top of the GST. So they should be side by side. And if there's a freight charge that you're charging your customer, so you're freighting something from Regina to Saskatoon, you don't charge them PST, because just as a matter of policy, in-province freight charges are not subject to PST. We have a few exempt customers, people who just don't pay PST, and that's federal government departments and agencies. And if you're selling to them, they usually will provide you with a purchase order, so that'll give you some documentation to support that exemption. Status Indians and Indian bands, they're exempt of PST, but the goods have to be sold to a status Indian, so you need the treaty card or the band number, and they have to be delivered to the reserve. So the delivery is key there also. Another exempt customer you might have is another business who's purchasing your goods to resell in their store. If that's the case, you need to get their PST number to exempt them. And you just want to have that documentation in your records so that if you ever get an audit, and you have an invoice that shows you didn't collect the PST, what was the reason? Well, it was another business purchasing that good to resell it, and here's their PST number. Goods shipped out of province to a non-resident are not subject to PST. If a non-resident comes into your store and buys something, they got to pay the PST. But if you ship it out, they're exempt, and you just need to keep that shipping documentation. The other exemption we have is Lloydminster. Lloydminster being a border town, there's just no PST in Lloydminster, with the exception of a few things. They do pay PST on their vehicles when they register them. There's PST on electricity, and I forget what the other thing is, but generally goods shipped to or picked up in Lloydminster, you will not see a provincial sales tax on there. So I talked a little bit, I guess, about the exempt goods, and basically everything's taxable, but prescription drugs and medicines, if they're prescribed by a medical practitioner and that you can only get them through a medical practitioner, then they're not subject to tax. And I mention that because a Tylenol, although the doctor might describe Tylenol, you don't need a prescription for it, so that would be taxable, but a prescription drug would not be. Agricultural equipment, we exempt farm equipment. Basically, items that are used primarily in farming activity. So your tractor, your auger, all those things, we know that they're only for farming. They're going to be exempt to a farmer at the time of purchase. Children's clothing, we don't tax children's clothing, and a couple of years ago they extended that to children 17 and under. So any children's clothing you sell to somebody that age, there's no PST. If you sell to an adult size item to a child 17 and under, they're also exempt of PST, but they got to complete a little certificate at the point of sale advising that they're buying it for their child 17 and under. Reading materials, pretty much all reading materials are not subject to PST. And then, of course, food and drinks aren't subject to PST. We do tax liquor. We do tax liquor at 10%, though. So this is non-alcoholic drinks are exempt to tax. So a registered consumer, this is the other type of business we register, and these are businesses like your contractors. They purchase goods, they rent goods, and they need to pay PST on those goods that they use to provide that service. So they can't purchase tax-free, unlike the vendor, and we don't give them commission because they don't collect tax. A business that collects tax gets commission from the government for collecting the PST. So the registered consumers are basically your roofers, your contractors, your doctors, businesses that don't collect tax, basically. I always like to use a little bit of example of a contractor. Contractor is somebody who repairs and improves real property, and they pay tax on the cost of the materials. So if you ever get something done on your home or your business and they're coming in to do plumbing, heating, electrical, really any real property improvement, the contractor is the consumer of the materials that they use. So when they go to Home Depot, they are going to pay the PST on the cost of that good. When they bill you for that repair, they should just say PST is included in the price, and you shouldn't see any separation of PST. You'll see a total lump sum price and then GST on the bottom. So if you notice a business that's doing a real property renovation and they're collecting PST from you, then you know that there's an error there, and you should either contact us or go back to the contractor and say, I understand there should be no PST. We don't tax the labor. We just want tax on the cost of the materials that went into the job, and that contractor is the one who should be paying it and just recouping it in the price to you. So we always explain a bit more about real property. Real property is land, it's buildings, it's basically anything that's attached to the building. Generally those are large and they can't be easily removed. They're sunk onto, bolted to, or cemented to. So that's how you know if it's real property. If it's intended to be there, then stay there. It's probably a repair to real property. Tangible personal property, we tax it a little different. That's why we like to explain the difference between real property and tangible personal property. But tangible personal property is movable and it's intended to be removed. Those are things like your vehicle, like your equipment, appliances, furniture, really things that are movable, right? So when we talk about labor charges, to tangible personal property, and let's talk about your car. When you go and get your car fixed, you're going to see PST on the parts, on the labor, and on the shop supplies, because that person is doing a repair to tangible personal property, and they're required to collect PST on the total charge. Manufacturing labor is subject to tax, and I explain that in terms of if you go to buy a table, you're going to pay tax on the total selling price, which includes the manufacturing they did to make that table. Labor to repair real property isn't subject to PST. So kind of just explain the different types of labor. You'll see PST on that taxable labor, but you won't on the labor to improve real property. If you rent goods, the rental of goods is subject to PST, so that could be renting a vehicle, renting a vacuum cleaner, renting a tool. Tax is applicable on those rentals. The person that's renting those goods to you wouldn't be required to pay PST when they bought that rental equipment, but when they bill it out to you as a customer, you should see PST on the rental of that good. If you rent a building or rent a space, there's no PST on that type of rental. Or if you rent something that comes with an operator, so a backhoe or a bobcat guy comes in to dig a hole in your yard, that's not considered a rental, that's considered a service, and you should not see PST on that service with that operator. I want to mention too that used goods are taxable. So an individual can purchase a used good exempt for the first $300. So if I'm a business and I'm selling my $1,000 computer to my neighbor, I would collect PST from my neighbor on $700 because they're buying it for personal use. They get a $300 exemption per item. But if I'm selling that same computer to a business, me as a business would collect PST on $1,000 because a business doesn't get a used good exemption. So basically, used goods are taxable to businesses. Talk a little bit about home-based businesses. We say you're not required to be licensed if your annual sales are less than $10,000 in a year. But if you attend trade shows or work outside of your home, because this is just when you're in your home, if you go to trade shows or set up somewhere else, you're required to be licensed. Most of these home-based businesses probably fall into more craft type of people, but there are home-based bookkeepers. If you're doing books for individuals and you're in your home and you're under 10,000, you're not required to collect PST. But if you're doing books for a business, then you're required to collect PST on that charge, and you would be required to be licensed even if you were under the $10,000. Businesses are required to pay tax on bookkeeping services, so we want you as that business doing that service to collect PST from the business. We note that they pay PST on raw materials. That's more the crafters. We don't have them collect PST if they're just selling crafts out of their home, but we know that they're paying PST on those raw materials that they buy to sell, to make their goods. So a little bit of information about registration. You can apply for a PST number on the phone, you can fax it in, you can mail it in, or you can come right into our Regina office. Generally takes about 7 to 10 days. You never have to renew, but you can't transfer it to anybody either. And there's no cost to get a PST number. Every business that's filing needs to have their tax return into us by the 20th day of the month following the return period. So if you're filing on an annual basis, your tax return is due in our office by January 20th. You will automatically get sent out a form. We file businesses monthly, quarterly, or annually. If you do file your return late, if you're later than the 20th, penalty and interest will apply. And if you file it on time, we'll give you commission for collecting the PST. Every business must file a return. Here's a little bit of information on our online services. All our information bulletins, PST notices, and rulings are on this website. You can click on the What's New, and that gives you updated information. Anytime there's a new bulletin, you can subscribe to that, and anytime there's information from our office, you'll get that information in an email. Everybody can file electronically their PST returns using the Saskatchewan Electronic Tax Service. We like to post our commitments, our taxpayer service commitments and standard codes there, so you can see what our commitment is to the businesses and to the public. And then there's a PST online registry, which is kind of a new one. You can go on our front page of our website and you can look up to see whether a business you're purchasing from is licensed to collect our PST or not. So that might be one where you see an invoice from somebody and they're charging you 5%, but they're in California and you're wondering, are they remitting that PST? Are they licensed to collect it, and are they remitting it? You can check to see if that business is registered to collect our PST. These are just a few levels of sets. There's 3 levels. There's no registration required on level 1 at all. Everybody gets this automatically on their tax return. On your PST return form, there's an e-file code. You can go onto our website and plug in that e-file code and basically make an internet banking transfer. So no more going to the bank. And then there's other levels there too that you can apply for. You can have you can have email notification, but you have to be registered for SET. So some people don't want that paper form anymore, so you can get an email notification about your tax return. That's all on our website. And we talked a bit about this online registry. So consumers and businesses can verify if their business is that they're dealing with is licensed. They say that the new registry would be of most use to contractors who are responsible for ensuring that all our subcontractors are registered for PST purposes. I'm not going to go into too much detail about non-resident contractors. If somebody has a question, they can answer me, or ask me after. But basically, when a non-resident comes into Saskatchewan to do work, so somebody from Alberta comes in with their truck and trailer and some tools, we tax equipment, tools, and vehicles that are brought in from non-residents. So if somebody has more specific questions on that, we can go through that. There is an information bulletin, PST 38, for non-resident contractors working in our province. So, and individuals who would like to confirm that the business they are making purchases from is registered. That's another reason for that online registry. And then wholesalers to verify that their retailers are licensed to purchase tax-free. So here's our toll-free number. We're available 8 to 5 every day. If you want to send an email and get us something in writing, you can send a tax to our Sask Tax Info. That's our email address. For written rulings or for PST presentations. Like I said, we'll come out to any business and sit with you and go through any PST information that you want specific to your business if you like. And then here's for further information, all our information there. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Great, thank you, Glenda. If anybody does have a question, now's the time to ask. You can use that chat box at the bottom to ask your question. Okay, we got a question from Ashley here. If we offer more than one service, including ones that aren't exempt and ones that are exempt, do we charge PST sometimes and sometimes not?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what that might be, Ashley, but basically, yeah, if you're doing a taxable service, so maybe you're doing some consulting, general consulting, and you're also doing some accounting services, what I would do is I would segregate the portion relating to the taxable part, the bookkeeping, and segregate the part to the consulting and just collect on the portion that's applicable. The thing was, if you don't separate them and it's billed out as accounting, and there would be a tax assessed on that total charge. So again, it depends on what you're asking. Okay.
All right. Oh, we got some more typing here. So is the $10,000 a gross amount?
I mean, it's your total sales amount. I guess I'm not sure what. It would be the total sales of 10,000. Yeah.
Okay, so not 10,000 net profit or anything like that. Okay, perfect. So can we get the slideshow? Yes, if you guys would like, or sorry, I guess I should ask Glenda. Glenda, is it okay if we
Yeah,
share the
absolutely,
slideshow?
it's okay, yeah.
Okay, so perfect. If you do want the slideshow, I am going to need you to simply ask for it in the chat box here, just so that we are aligned with the Canadian anti-spam legislation. So if you can just type in, send me the slides, I'll take care of them.
I should send you the slides,
okay.
Riley?
I have them. I have them, Glenda.
Okay.
So we have another question from Susan here. If I'm importing goods which are paid in British pounds, how do I submit the PST I owe?
Well, you would have to get it converted into Canadian funds, and you could probably do that on Google, and then you would just calculate what that amount is in Canadian funds and remit the 5% PST.
There's a question if they're asking calculate PST with GST included, so it's verified.
He's going to read it to me.
Oh, okay. I just missed it.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions?
Riley, there was one there about PST and GST above. I think we missed.
Oh, sorry. Find it here. Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, so Katie says, just to review, you said PST is calculated on the total, including or excluding GST.
That's right. They're side by side. So if you're selling a good, you should see a line for PST 5% and a line for GST 5%. We don't want to tax the PST on top of the GST.
Okay, so just the sale price, not the sale price plus GST.
That's right. PST applies on the selling price.
Perfect. All right, anything else?
And please know that if anybody ever wants to call our 1-800 number, honestly, we're available 8 to 5 every day. Anybody will answer your question. You'll get if nobody answers, you'll be back within a half an hour. You'll get a response. So.
Awesome. Oh, we got one more typing here. Can you help with
We generally.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Riley.
No.
We generally don't help with anybody's QuickBooks because there's so many different programs out there. But if you want to call in and just see if we can answer a portion of it, We certainly will do what we can, but none of us have had any real training on QuickBooks. But you never know, we might be able to help you anyways. And
all right. Well, if there are no more questions, we'll wrap things up here. I will make sure I get the slides to everyone who has asked for them. But thank you very much, Glenda. That was a lot of great information there. And thank you, everybody, for attending.
Oh, somebody is typing again.
A couple typing here.
Oh, thank you, Glenn. Oh, okay. Well, I hope that was informative for everybody, because it's hard to go over everything, and you just kind of want to go into general information. So.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and hopefully we'll catch you at the next one.
Awesome.